Sunday night again, as we come your way from Over the Horizon Brewing. Brian Giffen with the head coach, the football coach at the Citadel, Maurice Drayton, and it's great to have all you with us, presented by Cutwater Spirits, and we've got a special guest right here on the table, none other than the Silver Shako. Now, you're not going to hear from it, but those of you watching the video feed, isn't this a thing of beauty? It looks like it's at home, right?
Oh, it's definitely back at home in Charleston. We have so many people to thank. We thank our fans. We thank our alumni who made the trip to Lexington. But most importantly, we thank 50 knobs that was voluntold that they were going to the game. We packed them on a bus. We carried cots. They actually slept in the gym at VMI. Our football team caught wind of this. We took up a collection. We sent pizzas over, 30 pizzas over for those knobs. They had a great time. And we also have to give thanks to our regimental sergeant major and the regimental commander as well. It was a thing of beauty for them to come on the field to celebrate with the football team. Oh man, it felt so good.
And they were noisy over there too. They were actively engaged, and obviously as the game went on, you had a pretty good representation, as you'd expect in one of these head-to-head matchups of Citadel folks that made the trip up there. But they were very much engaged in the game, play by play.
Yes, they were into the game. They knew when to cheer, when not to cheer. The best part though was when the last seconds of the clock ran off, when the football team ran over to the visiting bleachers and told the knobs to come on the field and celebrate with us to accept this trophy together. Oh, it was outstanding, and we're really thankful for that. I got one other note too. We also, those knobs, they stayed afterwards and cleaned up the visitor stands.
Wow.
So I tell you, the product that we're putting out at our institution here in Charleston, South Carolina is bar none.
You know, there's always a lot of talent on display, but sometimes people don't realize, and in this case, both sides, the amount of character that's on display.
Yes. Well, we pride ourselves on building the whole person. The VMI does the same thing. You know, our hat goes off to Coach Danny Rocco, a fine coach. He's running a fine program. And their athletic director, he's class of 07 VMI, Jamal Walton. He's leading them in the right direction. We're going to have battles for years to come. And we talked a little bit about moving this game to the last game of the season and turning it into more of a bowl style where the opposing team will get in town on Thursday. We do a community service project together in that home site and have a banquet. So we're looking at various things to really pump this game up even bigger.
That's cool. And on the field, it really was a game that you're thrilled to win anytime. That's what it's all about. But you also have a notebook full of coaching points to take from this one also.
Absolutely. Those are the best kind of mistakes when you get a win and you're able to go back and correct it. I'll tell you this. Last week I used a analogy, not an analogy, but I read off stat lines and I asked, what team did you think won? Well, it's the opposite this week.
Right.
They beat us in most statistical categories with the exception of the score. And it worked out for us just fine.
I'm calling and you know, obviously broadcasting the post-game show as it's going along, and I'm going through the stats, and of course I hadn't glanced that much because you're caught up in each play of the game when you're doing it, but I arrive at 0 for 11 on third down, 2 for 20, 2 for 12 or whatever. I mean, have you ever seen two teams in a game go 2 for 25 on third down?
Never seen it. I've never been a part of it. I've
crazy.
Never been a part of 0 and 11 on third down. It's unbelievable.
Both defenses obviously ruled this game, and the score alone will tell you that. Just talked about the third downs, but you know, when you contained Rice for one. You talked a lot about that. I think it was 20 carries, about 70 yards or so. I was talking to Blaze a few minutes ago. And by the way, Blaze Barista will be up here in a little bit, the Dogs safeties coach. But did you anticipate they would go with the number of direct snaps that they did with him? They did that a lot, really one whole possession.
Absolutely. Well, anytime he's the engine that makes this car go, our defensive staff did a fine job in preparing for that. We knew that he would have the ball in his hands in multiple ways, whether it was direct snaps, whether it was handoff, whether they're throwing a screen. He's a very, very good player. He's one that I think has a Sunday skill set, and quite frankly, I hope he gets that opportunity.
The big goal line stand late, you guys really defensive and really make the case for both sides. Both defenses were just outstanding in this game.
They were, and I want to send a shout out to our defensive line. They continue to play well. They're playing at a high level, and it doesn't matter when we sub our defensive line, the production does not drop off. That goal line stand was a thing of beauty. That's what defenses live for. And I'm just so excited we were able to execute that all the way through.
Lee and I were surprised that you guys didn't throw it as much as you did. Was there anything with conditions, or was it just you knew that if you kept pounding it, that eventually you'd wear them down? What was the thinking behind limiting throwing it so much?
Well, remember, I said I wanted to play a boring brand of football, and it started Western Carolina week because of a high-powered offense that they had. We wanted to make sure that 24 didn't have an opportunity to get that ball in his hands. Our first drive was a thing of beauty. I mean, we used over 8 minutes on that first drive. Now, ideally, you want to finish with a touchdown, but we finished with points.
Right.
So that is the kind of ball that we want to play right now. That's the kind of ball we will need to play. And we'll talk about it further. Sanford's coming in, and they are a high-powered offense. Their head coach, Chris Hatcher, he is one of the originators of the air raid offense.
Right.
So we're going to have our hands full, but for us, our best defense right now is our offense and time of possession.
There were two things, and Lee and I, again, throughout the game. For one, knock on wood, but one thing you guys haven't done a lot this year is put the ball on the ground. And in this game, they got a couple of them pawed out. I think you lost 2 of them and maybe had 4 of them altogether that went on the ground. And again, it's not a pattern, but it does happen, and those contributed big time to keeping the game close, but your defense also helped overcome those.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something we have not done. And let me tell you, Coach Everett Sands prides himself on our running backs protecting the ball, on our offense protecting and securing the ball. Let's just say those guys had to pay a hefty fine this week because of that.
Another one, so this has happened with JB a couple of times. Look, it's a lot easier to analyze when you're watching, calling the game, but there have been a couple instances where he's taken a sack, and I'm sure you guys have preached to get rid of the ball, but in a couple instances, too, it'll take you out of field goal range.
Yes, that is something we talk about. That's something we work on. We're a situational-based outfit, so we just don't practice offense versus defense or offense versus scout, defense versus scout. We do a lot of situations in practice, and that is one of the things we have harped on, and it has happened, and it cannot happen any longer because points are a premium, especially with this opponent we're going to face this week.
Right. Big game for Tyler Cherry. I mean, even though you threw it, whatever it was, the 6 times, 3 of those went to him, including, of course, the decisive one. He also caught the first ball, I think a 15-yard catch that got you an important first down early in the game. And he's another of these experienced guys that's been here, been through a lot, seen a lot, but has played a role this year where he's helped you win, too.
Yes, and his experience is paying off. On the route that he scored the touchdown on, if you go back and you look at that play, the linebacker was covering him in a manner in which earlier in the year we didn't adjust to the linebacker's angle. He was able to slip that linebacker, and now he's in position to catch a clean ball, and he did the rest with his feet.
Yeah, it's one of those out and up things, and somebody bit a little too much.
Yes, sir.
But so their D-line, you and I were talking about this right before we went on, they did make it tough to run. What was it they were doing with a relatively tame number of them to keep people back? What was it they were doing that made them tough to run on?
Yes, so they had movement. They were shifting. They were changing the dots for us. We did not have clear pictures post-snap. Pre-snap, we had a picture, and then as soon as we snapped the ball, the dots changed. And so we have to adjust to that a little bit better. And their linebackers and safeties were very aggressive. So they made it tough for the running back run, but our quarterback runs, we were right on schedule. Everybody's looking at me like, Coach, what do you mean? 3 yards here, 5 yards here.
Right.
2 yards here. 4 yards here. You just have to be patient, and I have the patience of Job.
You know, you and I talk at times about this process, and you refer to it often. It's the learning how to win situation. And part of that is a game like this. I guess where I'm going is that because of the level of rivalry it is all week long, you know, beat VMI, this and that, the Shako, the whole 9 yards. How much do you feel like, and I think you said something about it at the half, how much do you feel like everybody's maybe trying too much to make one play to win the game rather than just pound it out and do your gig?
Yes, it was amazing. So our players are bought in, and they want to win so bad. And coaches alike, too.
Right.
I talked about the coaches at halftime, players and coaches. Everybody was trying to make the perfect call to win the game. Every player was trying to make a play to win the game when we just have to do our job and make a play. So we addressed that at halftime. And then when we came out after halftime in the third quarter, then we were waiting for our teammate to make the play.
Right.
And we didn't settle quite in until the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter, and it was we played complimentary ball. We were a star in our individual roles, and that's all I ask out of coaches, trainers, equipment managers, players, everybody in the program. Be a star in your role.
Special teams have been a big deal and been a big part of the success you guys have had this year. And the constant behind all that has been James Platt. Again, another big day for him. I think he averaged 51 per punt in this game. And we thought that they even got a hand on one of them, and he got a great bounce. But, in a low-scoring game, field position always matters, but it matters that much more.
Yeah, field position is everything. They did get a hand on it, and it was a 58-yard punt. But now I got on Platt pretty good. It's time for him to take the next step in his maturation process. So you say, what are you talking about, Coach? I'm talking about his pooch punts. We have too many punts that's going in the end zone. We're going to do some things with his drop. We're going to do some things with how he molds the ball before he punts when we're in that pooch zone so that we get that backspin that we want, or a banana ball to where it's out of bounds inside the 10. But too many balls in the end zone, and then we can never, ever, ever, ever. We had a low snap.
Right.
And the only reason why I'm talking about this publicly is because I'm always honest with our players, and they can handle it. He can't bend where his knee touches the ground. You have to be an ankle, knee, hip bender, right? So your knee doesn't touch the ground and get that ball off.
See, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we were absolutely baffled as to what happened. We went to a break because we thought they were going to review whether the ball was touched, in the end zone or not, and it's either going to be at the 1 or the 20. We go to a commercial break, and we come back and like, what are these guys doing at our 40-yard line, whatever it was, and our ref feed, we didn't get any announcement of it, and so it turned out could you clearly see his knee touch the ground, or is that something
absolutely. I knew as soon as it happened.
We had no idea.
It was a low snap, and so these are things that we work on with our punters. We do bad ball drills, all right, where he has to field balls without making sure he's, knees not on the ground, making sure he can get back to his drop spot, making sure he can get back to his launch zone. So there's a lot of things that go into special teams that a lot of people just don't know, but I love talking about it.
Right. Well, the Silver Shako is home. It is sitting right here, and if you're joining us via video, isn't that a thing of beauty? The Silver Shako is home where it belongs. Brian Giffen with Coach Drayton. This is Beyond the Barracks. Coming up, we'll bring Blaze Barista up here, the safeties coach for the Dogs, and good defensive game. You've worked this out perfectly, because I get to talk to these guys on a pregame show. Then they come out here where it's perfect, man.
Yeah,
you teed that up for me.
Oh yeah, Blaze he's a rising star in this profession. We're lucky to have him. He had the opportunity to go be a defensive coordinator out west at a smaller school last year, but he elected to stay with us. We're just blessed to have him.
Coming up a little later, we'll have wrestling coach Ryan LeBlanc up here. We'll talk about the Bulldog wrestling program also, and the Bulldogs beat VMI Saturday 13-10. They'll take on Samford this week. Battle of the Bulldogs, senior day. We'll get into that a little bit more as we talk about Samford too. But that comes your way on radio at 2 o'clock. Pre-game coverage begins at 1. This is Beyond the Barracks. Here we dive into a timeout. Back with more after this on the Citadel Bulldogs Radio Network. Go Dogs! Over the Horizon Brewing, as we are every week, and we're recapping a Citadel win over VMI 13-10 in Lexington Saturday, thus making room on the bus for the Silver Shako, which sits up here on the table. Seated behind the Silver Shako at the moment is Bulldog Safeties coach Blaze Barista, and it's even more fun doing this after a win, huh?
Oh, 100%.
No, let me give you some mic volume here. There you go.
100%. I was telling some guys coming here, I'm like, this is so much better coming here after a win. Just, little bragging points to those guys.
Talk a little bit about the game. There's an intensity level in a rivalry like that is a little bit. All the games, every play is intense, but there's an intensity level in rivalries. We talked a little about this on the pregame show last week too. The amount of back and forth, and how much passion there is on both sides. It really matters that much more to go out and win a game like that.
Oh, 100%. And going into year two, after coming off a loss to VMI in our first game, and them storming our field and doing all that stuff and taking the Shako from us, this was circled on our calendar all year long, and you felt it in the building this past week.
The defense is really for both sides. The stats don't lie. Their defense played great. Your defense played great. But you guys also made such critical plays down the stretch where one means or the other, they had great field position, a short field a number of times and came away with nothing. We were very puzzled they didn't go for a field goal down there when you had the goal line stand. Thankfully, they didn't. And the plan was to neutralize or contain Hunter Rice, and you guys were able to do that.
Yeah, we absolutely did. We executed our game plan, and we went out there with the plan of, stopping 24, and he had 20 carries for 70 yards. A couple more carries than we expected, with the quarterback going out. But we really stopped him late in that third and fourth quarter.
So Coach was telling me a few minutes ago, you prepare for it because they're going to do it at times. They may have an occasional wildcat or something like that, but they went to a sequence where they really direct snapped him. I think it was an entire possession, then a couple of plays later in the game. Was that something you were prepared for it to just be a direct snap thing to him? Certainly play after play after play.
Absolutely, we did. Once that quarterback did go down, we made adjustments on the sideline, and we got into some different checks once we saw him in the wildcat.
I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple of guys that, your group in general has just piled up tackles all year long between, Cale and Dom, who kind of fits into your room also, and then Evan Bird all over the field. And then when you're playing behind guys like Thomas and a couple of the others that are piling up tackles also, you're making a lot of tackles in the back end, but you're also being able to play aggressively and come up and run and make those stops.
Yeah, absolutely. Those guys have been doing a heck of a job all year long, coming down and fitting their gaps and running the alley and tackling and getting the guys on the ground. We harp on it all week since fall camp started, stepping on the runner's toes, rapping and squeezing, rolling, and doing all that stuff. So it's just showing up, from their practice.
As you sit here and, so now we're preparing for the 9th game of the year, and look, the goal is always to get better play by play, game by game, week by week. What areas do you feel like, as we, still have the last quarter of the season here, what areas would you like to see step it up even that much more?
I'd like to see us play the ball in the air better and improve, take the ball from the receivers. Just too many balls getting caught and catch tackles. We want to get PBUs and interceptions.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this matchup with Samford. Bulldogs versus Bulldogs, another SoCon rival, it seems like obviously every conference game is a rivalry, but that's one that they've kind of gotten the better of the Citadel the last couple of years. You'd love to send them home with an L, but you also catch them at a time where they're playing their best ball.
Yeah, they are. They had a great game against Mercer. They jumped on Mercer, in that first and second quarter. But what we're looking at is, they didn't score in the second half of that game.
Right.
So, we're kind of seeing what Mercer did to affect them in the second half. And, it's going to be a good game on Saturday.
And their quarterback, Quincy Crittenden, is another guy that is a mobile, he can throw it, he can run it, he's danger with his feet, another dual threat type of guy. When you look at the tape for your group specifically, what do you feel like your guys have to do well to contain him and to get a W?
We got to cover the receivers. We got some different plans that we're working towards right now, but we got to cover the receivers. He's good with the ball. He's accurate with the football. He's been in that program for 3 years now, so he knows their offense in and out. And he got in the game last year against us late in the fourth quarter, so we know he's dangerous with his feet as well.
Football's an odd game, isn't it? They always talk about that. That's why it's an oval ball, can take funny bounces, all that stuff. You could make the case that this was one of, at least on the offensive side, they struggled to kind of find their rhythm this last week. So it wasn't, on a whole team-wide sense, one of the better performances of the year. Defensively, it was this last week. But you played so well and fired on all cylinders for 3.5 quarters against Furman, and you lose that game in a heartbreaking manner. But then you come back to this one where you can't put much together on offense. Did get enough, thankfully, but you win that game. It's just an odd. It's one of the things I think that makes it great.
Yeah, that's what's great about this game of football. You gotta sometimes lean on your brother, which is offense or special teams, when defense isn't playing so good, and vice versa. And so offense was relying on us. We got them the ball back, and Tyler Cherry took it to the house.
You talked about your relationship with Raleigh and kind of how you got here when we had you on the pregame last week. And honestly, it's, the whole thing is a lot of fun for us to work around and to watch develop and all that stuff. But defensively, really, since this season started, the defense has kept you in every single game. And I feel like who knows what happens with Clemson. That's a little bit of a different situation. But if you can get that, you've always got a chance.
Absolutely. Coach Jackson preaches code blue, which I wore it on my shirt today. That's academics, communication, enthusiasm, and grit, and that's what our guys put on the field every single day.
Every coach kind of has their own nuanced stuff, this and that. One of the things I think is cool about Raleigh, even when I'm out there at practice the one day a week that I am, is that he'll make it a point to go around to every one of his defensive guys, slap them on the head, how you doing, what's going on, quick handshake, whatever it is, every day at practice, every game, too.
Absolutely. He's a player's coach is what they say, and he has a relationship with every single guy. So when he does get on them during practice, they respond in a positive manner instead of a negative way.
So you're still pretty early in this whole coaching thing, and obviously you're kind of entrenched here at the Citadel. What are your long-term goals? I mean, obviously as a coach, the sport's kind of your life. Do you see yourself, eventually trying to run a whole program, or what are your longer-term goals? Or are you just living in the moment, loving the game, and being a part of what's going on?
I try to live in the moment. I try and stay in the moment, but I do have long-term goals, especially working for Coach Drayton now and seeing and asking him questions about the NFL and how it was at the highest level. That is a level I want to get at. And so, the only way I can get there is live in the moment and, do the best I can right now where I'm at.
Final thing for you here. So as we look ahead to Samford, you talked about covering guys, this and that. A couple of keys from a defensive perspective. What are a couple things you feel like you guys have to do really well to get this win and get the fourth win of the year and the second in a row?
Absolutely. We got to start fast. We got to jump on these guys early. We got to get 3 and outs on the first 2 drives. That's what I tell my guys. We got to get 3 and out on the first 2 drives. We got to control their tempo. They're a tempo team, and so if we can get them out of their rhythm and give our offense the ball back, we can play boring football.
Right.
And so that will take a lot of time off the clock. And then when we get another stop and our offense plays more boring football and put some points on the board, we'll get that thing rolling.
Yeah, boring football added to great defense equals success.
Absolutely.
All right. Blaze Barista, the Bulldogs safeties coach, up here hanging out with us talking football tonight. We are at Over the Horizon Brewing. This is Beyond the Barracks. We do this every Monday. We're talking Citadel football as the Dogs come off a 13-10 win at VMI, thus sending the Silver Shako home here in Charleston where it belongs, and it sits here proudly on the table. Coach Drayton will come back up here. We also will have the wrestling coach, Coach LeBlanc, come up here in a little bit, and we'll talk with him also. All of that comes your way after we take a quick break here. By the way, I'm Brian Giffen. He is Blaze Barista. Joe Mack is running us in the studio tonight, and we're back to bring you more of this on the other side. You're listening to the Citadel Bulldogs Radio Network. Beyond the Barracks. Yeah, it's Monday night as we talk Citadel football and Over the Horizon Brewing. Not just Citadel football, we're talking Citadel wrestling now.
Yes.
I want to make this point quickly because our board operator in the studio, Joe Mack, is a huge wrestling fan, but we're talking about that professional wrestling. Our guest now is Ryan LeBlanc, who is the wrestling coach at the Citadel, and I'm only going to say there's a big difference.
Yeah, it's completely night and day.
Right.
But you'd be surprised, man. I've coached two guys who are in professional wrestling now that have gone on and are in the WWE, and then a ton. You wouldn't believe how many kids that's their first introduction into our sport.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
You know, it's a funny thing. Bronson Recksteiner. You remember the Steiner brothers? Bronson Recksteiner, who now has gone the wrestling route. He was a football player at Kennesaw State when I was there. This was a guy, Coach, you'd have loved him. He's like 260 that could run like a 4.4.
Rick Steiner? I thought he played at Michigan.
No, this is Bronson Recksteiner.
Okay.
So he was the son of one of those Steiner brothers, and they're from like Ackworth, Georgia over there. And now he's gone on. He had a tryout with the Ravens, I think signed as a free agent and all that, but didn't make it. And then he transitioned to his natural progression to the wrestling world, but just a small connection to paths along the way working in football. Let's talk a little bit about your team. As you know, here we are in this 24-25 school year, and every year is kind of a new thing in and of itself in every sport.
Yeah, every team's different, and you start off with a whole new crew, and then you got to get from point A to point B. So that's exactly how we try to approach it every year. Every year's new. We got a new personnel, new team, new kids, and so we try not to get complacent with what we've done in the past, and we're excited. We're excited for the journey that's ahead.
Coach can speak to this too. I mean, when you're a coach at a military college like this, your recruiting challenges are a little bit different because you're looking for more of a specific kind of kid that fits in a lot of different categories, not just the sport. So there's a lot that goes beyond it. How do you find it recruiting guys?
Yeah, I think that's a misconception for me. Like, I'll tell you, I'd say 70% of my team were kids that didn't know about the Citadel.
Right.
We called them and built a relationship, and over time they came, stayed overnight, and were around our team and just realized that the kids at the Citadel are kids just like them.
Right.
Yeah. And so you got to find a motivated kid who's really got his future in mind, that invests in that idea of delayed gratification. But if he's serious about school and about wrestling and about living a lifestyle of discipline, then I think it's perfect. So that's the game we play.
Right. One of the things I've found is that there's a real loyalty element with the Citadel athletics in general. I mean, obviously every school has it. There's whatever level of love and loyalty to universities, but it's special here I think just because of how long the history goes back. And what I've found is that even in times of struggle, I've never seen any signs of apathy from people. The passion level is still all the way up there. If anything, in overcoming some of the challenges in college sports these days, it's like people are more determined than ever to be behind you, and that's a real gift from a fan base.
Yes.
Absolutely. And we have some of the best supporters and loyal supporters, our alumni base. I mean, guys like General Regner, Mike Regner, class of 76,
right.
Ed Steers. These are guys who, when I first took over the program, I mean, really huge mentors for me over the last 4 to 5 years, and I think that's what makes the Citadel special. Yeah. I think we've all felt that and experienced that. And when you can harness that and get it behind your program, it's amazing what comes out of the woodwork here.
Yeah.
Coach Drayton's obviously a big wrestling fan too. I'd love to get your thoughts on the interaction and the interconnection between what you do in the football offices and what Ryan here does.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I'm a big fan of wrestling. It was my first love. It was the sport that I wanted to do. My brother was better than me. He wrestled collegiately, went to the NCAAs, which is a big thing. He never made All-American though, but he won a few matches. So that's in our family. That's our family sport.
Right.
Actually, I was the outlier that went to football, but what our wrestling team does and what Coach has been able to do is is just outstanding, and I love watching them work. On Thursdays, we get out of practice a little early, and when I come back, I always walk through the weight room.
Right.
His wrestlers are eating weights. They're getting after it. I can't wait till we're having that match on the Yorktown.
Right.
Oh, I'm
right.
going to be there front and center.
Yeah, I was just going to go to that next. I was going to say, let's talk a little bit about this throwdown on the Yorktown. That's a cool thing to be a part of, and it actually turns out to be kind of a home thing right here in town for you guys, too.
Yeah, it was just a great opportunity. There's a guy, Neil Collins. He's a wrestling official in South Carolina, and he's a House of Representative member for South Carolina. It was his idea, and he's the one who got this to grow legs. But as soon as we got involved and plugged in, and then it just like each piece kind of came together. West Point got involved, and then UVA, and we're really excited. To be able to do that, I think it's going to be a special event for our kids, our community. I think there was 1,100 tickets, and I'm pretty sure we sold like 40 to 50% of all tickets.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. It's really cool to get to be a part of something like that, because in a way you're sort of making some history too. I mean, we've seen college basketball games on Navy ships, for instance. When I was with the Braves, we actually played a Sunday night baseball game at Fort Bragg, where they built a major league ballpark out of scaffolding and plywood in a field there, and they had to come in and cable all that stuff, and we played one. But still, it's one of those things that you got to be a part of something really cool, and you got to be a part of kind of a historical element, in this case in Citadel wrestling history too. That's a really cool thing. So how many teams will be in it?
I think there's 8 teams total. There's 4 Division I teams. So, and it's so there's Division I, 2, 3, and then there's actually a women's duel. So they, in every level, there's a state represented team. So it's really trying to rally South Carolina wrestling, and put it, create an environment where we get hopefully we attract some eyeballs.
So you wrestled at Indiana University. We were talking about this during the commercial break. My parents were students there when I was born at Indiana University. So as a fellow IU connected person, how about what's happened with football there this year? Is that crazy? That's not an Indiana thing now.
So no, it's not. It's funny. I actually, I doubted them in the beginning.
Right.
And one of my friends, who's a really big college football fan, told me how good they were going to be. I was like, no way.
Coach Signetti is the real deal.
No doubt.
I work with his brother at the Green Bay Packers, and there's a relationship there. That family is dialed into football, but they're dialed into human beings. They tap into the why. He actually took 26 of his players from JMU to IU, and they understood the culture. So that first year for him, which is right now, was easy because he brought the culture with him.
The best start in their history was like 1967 or what, and that was the best year in their history. And that tells you about football there, and you would know this as well or better than anybody. That tells you how great. I think they're 7-0. But since you had the unique perspective of having wrestled at Indiana and had and you coached in Indianapolis too. You know how big a deal IU football typically isn't in terms of the front page, but it's just an amazing thing. And with the Indiana ties, I had to ask you.
I'll tell you, my buddies are really excited about it. It's all they can talk about. I've kind of, the last couple of weekends, I've done a lot of research on that coach, just try to get to know him, because obviously he's doing it right. Like Coach said, I mean, he's dialed in, and to do it at a place that doesn't have a culture of that is, you got to be a little bit special to do that right away.
And I mean, this guy, he walked in there the first day at his press conference and said, "Google me, I win." And he has backed it up. I mean, he did a great job at Elon. He did an exceptional job at Jay. And the only thing I wonder about, and this speaks a little to the culture, and how long till somebody backs the Brinks truck up for this guy? I mean, it's only his first year there. That's just the nature of it nowadays.
Yeah, it is.
He brought his culture with him. But that's athletics right now.
Right.
I tell you, I'm a big fan of the Signetti family.
Yeah, no doubt. He's done a great job. Hey, it's great to have you up here. And obviously, any time that you're out and in the area, and any time that we can get you, come out here and join us on Beyond the Barracks. And I look forward to watching some wrestling matches when I have the opportunity at McAllister.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we actually have 3 we're at home the next 3 weekends. We've got our inter-squad wrestling match this weekend right before the football game. we're going to go into a tailgate with our alumni and then go over to the football game. And then we're at home. We've got NC State, George Mason, Duke, Air Force, all in our gym at home on the 3rd. And then we're at the Yorktown on the 8th. So it's going to be a lot of college wrestling right here in Charleston.
Another thing people don't understand, I'll leave you on this note because my brother struggled with it for years. You got all those guys that got to make weight, got to remember wearing plastic suits and not eating and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we've gotten away. It's changed so much. I mean, it's so much easier now than it was then.
To be fair, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But so my brother, I think he wrestled at the time he was like 147 or something like that. But he's obviously a much bigger guy than that now. But yeah, I just had to bring that up because I used to tease him. Hey, I get to eat this sandwich right here. I get to, it's all just having fun, brotherly love stuff. Thanks so much, Ryan, for coming up. And obviously, we look forward to great things. And maybe when I'm over there to set up for a basketball game, I'll come in and check it out too.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Sounds good. Yeah. That is Ryan LeBlanc, the wrestling coach at the Citadel. Right here, we'll take one more time out. Coach and I will come back. We'll set the scene for the Bulldogs versus the Bulldogs this weekend as the Citadel hosts Sanford. 2 o'clock game Saturday. We're on the air with pregame coverage at 1, and we are back at Over the Horizon Brewing. By the way, Beyond the Barracks is presented by Cutwater Spirits, and we're back with the final segment of it on the other side of this break. You're listening to the Citadel Bulldogs Radio Network. Coach Drayton back up here solo, I guess now.
Oh, yeah.
As we get ready for this game against Samford. And they did have a bit of a tough time earlier in the year, and I think maybe a couple surprising results. Perhaps the one against West Georgia would have surprised the most people. That's right at the beginning of the season. But they also struggled against Campbell, but then they've kind of found their footing. The game against ETSU got away from them, but they really built a big lead in that too, which tells you the kind of firepower they've got.
Yes, they start fast. They're explosive. I spoke earlier about Coach Hatcher. He is the real deal. He's one of the innovators of the air raid offense. These guys put up big offensive numbers. Against Mercer last week, they had 446 total offense. Their quarterback, like VMI last week, it was the running back. The quarterback, Quincy Creedon, he makes them go. He can make all the throws. His deep ball throws are surgical. I mean, he's like a surgeon. You can't hand the ball off better than what he throws vertically, and he's able to throw the deep out. At our level, a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Right.
That's why you have field corners and boundary corners. But he can make that throw. He has 14 passing touchdowns on the season so far. And then they have a running back. He's a bowling ball type. He's like 5'8", 220 pounds, and he is hard to tackle. And two receivers that are at the top of their game. Brendan Jenkins, he wears jersey number 12. This guy was 2023 Freshman of the Year in our conference at the receiver position. And then they have a guy named Jai Madsen from Jackson, Mississippi. And I lived in Mississippi for 2 years. I coached at Southern Miss. Let me tell you something. They know how to play ball there.
Right. What would you say is going to be the toughest thing about them from the standpoint of keeping them contained? One thing that you've gotten pretty consistently all year is good play out of your defense. They've kept you in all of them. You just got to go find some points.
Well, let me tell you this. So they are a tempo offense.
Right.
And they play fast. If you go back to the Western game, we did not adjust to the tempo until it was 14-0.
Right.
So one of my challenges this week is figuring out a way to match the tempo early. I told our coaches in the meeting today, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, you know what? We may run gassers before the game, before the opening kickoff.
Wow.
I may put us on the line and run gassers so that these guys get their heart rate up.
Right.
They get their energy up. They're excited about what's about to happen. We have to think outside the box to get our guys to play fast early.
And this is the return home now after back-to-back weeks on the road. Tough result at Western Carolina, but a game you played well enough to win. You come off this win. Hopefully you can put together a little momentum here and get a win against Samford, something you're still looking for. And by the way, congrats on the first Southern Conference win. That was one that could have come a little bit earlier, but obviously one you're excited to get.
Yeah, very excited, but I'm not excited for myself. Somebody asked me that earlier. I'm excited for our players. They are putting in the work. They're doing the right things. They're working hard, and I want them to bear the fruits of their labor. But not only them, the coaches. These coaches spend so much time away from their wives, their children, their loved ones. They need a life too.
Right.
And they dedicate their lives to our fine institution and our 115 young men that's on our roster.
You know, with all the glamour that comes with and the responsibility that comes with being a coach, I think a lot of people out there in the regular world don't realize what an all-encompassing gig being an assistant or a head coach is.
No, they don't understand, and that's why wives, significant others, girlfriends, you know, our hats go off to you guys because you see the behind-the-scenes work,
doubt.
and it's very tough. It's very, very tough.
I'd like to talk about your seniors now. It's senior day at Johnson Haygood Stadium. That, by the way, Samford coming to town. Bulldogs versus Bulldogs. The Citadel owes them one, at least one. It is a 2 o'clock kickoff, and we have on-air coverage at 1 o'clock on radio. But let's talk about your seniors now with senior day this coming Saturday. In this day and age, I mean, more and more seniors in a lot of programs started out somewhere else. But here, uniquely, as you guys develop players and the way that you do things, a lot of these guys have been here for the ride.
Yeah, let me say this, because it's confusing to a lot of people who look in a brochure, look in a magazine, look in a publication. We only have 7 graduate transfers that are on scholarship.
Right.
I just want to make sure that that is crystal clear, because most of our guys have matriculated from being a knob
Right.
through our system, and they have graduated in 3.5 years, and they have eligibility. And whether they were redshirted or not, they have the ability to come back as a graduate or go on in a society and be a productive citizen. I thought I read something somewhere where someone said over half our team are graduate transfers. That's not true.
Well, graduate student and graduate transfer are two different things.
Totally different. They just look in the brochure and they see graduate. But what I'm trying to tell you now is this. We have guys who we're trying to figure out. We're recruiting our own team
Right.
to come back to us because they have degrees, because they have master's degrees. They can go in the workforce and make $90,000 a year.
Right.
They can make $100,000 a year. They can have real jobs, real lives, and we're recruiting them to come back and say, hey, play college football one more year, because the best teams at the Citadel in football have been teams that are older. But because we put out a product as a university where our graduates are wanted and they're in demand,
Right.
it makes it tough for us sometimes.
Yeah, there's no question. Having worked much closer this year with the graduate college on, various things from messaging and outreach and branding and things like that, that is one esteemed degree to get. Now, the interesting thing here is so that technically you could have a guy that is, again, technically a grad student on your roster, but if he has eligibility left, he could come back and be a grad student next year too? Absolutely.
We have a few of those guys that fit that category. I don't know what NCAA rules are. I think because they're on my roster, I can talk about them. Let's take Javante Graves Billups, for instance. He's a senior in the Corps. He can graduate and come to us as a graduate student next year, but the problem is he wants to go to PT school. It's not a problem. Let's make sure it's crystal clear.
Right.
It's not a problem, but he can go to PT school and further his career. So now I have to make a decision because I care about each and every individual's why. His why is, hey, I want to go to PT school. Do I belabor that? Do I hold that back? Or do I help push him and help him get into PT school so he can be a graduate of our institution and give back? I would like to have him back as a player, but those are the things that happen. How about this? When I first got on campus, there was a young man out of James Island, South Carolina, played offensive line, Drayton, my namesake. I wanted him to come back. He graduated. He had eligibility, but he had a job waiting on him in Charlotte to make $90,000 a year. For our young men, that is everything.
Yeah.
So, my hat goes off to him. I love him to death. It's my namesake. He's my cousin. I'm like, come on, come back.
Right. The one thing that's going to happen, though, is if you have guys like that in your program, that just speaks to the culture that you've got there, which means you'll develop more and you'll attract others that maybe can't get a graduate degree elsewhere that want to come down here for such a prestigious one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we invest in the student. You have to be a student before you're an athlete, and we pride ourselves on that. We're happy to help these young men reach their whys.
Give me a couple of keys as you take on Samford. What are the 2 or 3 things you feel like as a team you guys have to do well to get this one?
Yes, sir. So here's the deal. In the last 5 years, I want to make sure everybody understands what we're facing. The last 5 years, Samford has outscored us 256 points to 85, right?
Yeah.
So we got work to do. Offensively, we have to establish a run game that's not quarterback oriented.
Right.
It has to be running back oriented. We got to get the running backs going. We have to neutralize their linebacking core. I was on the phone today with a few NFL scouts who was talking about their linebacker who wears the jersey number 5. They have another linebacker that wears 33. These guys are lights out, so we have to neutralize them. Offensively, we have to win the time of possession.
Right.
One of our best defenses is our offense being on the field, and we have to finish drives with points. Then, special teams. We have to bully their blockers. What do I mean by that? in their receiving phases, when they're blocking for them, we have to be the bully. We
Right.
have to be that guy that suffocates them. Also, in the special teams, we have to block a kick, we have to score, or steal a possession. We have to do 2 of those 3 things. I'm going to say it one more time. We have to block a kick, we have to score, or steal a possession. Last but not least, on defense, we have to start fast. We have to match their tempo. That's what we talked about earlier today. We have to exceed their tempo. We have to also win in the red zone. Samford has had 71 plays in the red zone. So we have to win the red zone versus Samford defensively. Last but not least, limit the quarterback's efficiency. He is the most efficient quarterback in the Southern Conference.
All right. Well, the Dogs take on the Bulldogs, host the Bulldogs as Samford comes to town on Saturday. That's a 2 o'clock kickoff, and we'll, of course, have pregame coverage at 1 o'clock. Our thanks to everybody here at Over the Horizon Brewing and, of course, Cutwater Spirits, who brings you Beyond the Barracks. Thanks to Coach Drayton, as always.
Appreciate it.
And Blaze Barista, and also Ryan LeBlanc, the wrestling coach, coming up and hanging out. And we thank the Silver Shakeout for joining us, too.
Definitely.
Stick around a while. Several years would be good.
Take some pictures with the Silver Shakeout.
Right. No
also,
question.
one of our administrators just walked in the building, Gaylord Green. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting.
We got here right at the end. That'll about do it for us. This is Beyond the Barracks. We will talk to you Saturday, everybody. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.